Superman vs. The Flash is one of the great babyface versus babyface matches in all of superhero comics. Sure, Superman vs. Batman feels like a bigger deal because you're talking about the two most popular and recognizable superhero characters ever, and it can lead to some great stories because of the personalities involved and the creative ingenuity necessary to make it even a remotely competitive conflict. I love Batman, but let's face it, if they were real people and Superman was pissed at Batman, the fight's already over. That fight would have 2 hits. Superman hitting Batman, and Batman hitting the call button to have Alfred bring him some clean underwear. But Superman and the Flash has historically not been depicted as a fight, but as a race. A friendly competition between 2 extremely fast dudes. That pairing demands less imagination on the part of the writer to make the 2 of them seem evenly matched. Superman and the Flash both have superpowers after all. But then you've got another problem. If your starting premise is Superman races the Flash to see who's faster, what's the story? Because the premise is pretty straightforward. Straightforward and irresistible. DC Comics writers and artists have returned to the concept of Superman racing against the Flash to see who's faster over and over again for decades. And I totally get why. It's simple, it's fun, it's one of those rare concepts that has been the subject of endless arguments among fans, but that can also serve as the basis for a story without feeling too contrived or fan-servicey. And it feels like the end result of the race could go either way. We've seen races between Superman and the Flash depicted in multiple adaptations of the characters in media other than comics. Supes and Flash raced each other in an episode of Superman the Animated Series. The CW's version of the Flash and Supergirl race, sort of, in an episode of the Supergirl TV series, the first crossover between those two. And a race between the Flash and Superman is the subject of a post-credit scene added to the theatrical cut of the Justice League movie in a valiant attempt to make that version of Superman into a likable human being. For this video, I'm going to focus on the times Superman has raced the Flash in the comics. That doesn't really narrow it down all that much, since they've raced a whole bunch. I'm not going to go into detail on every single time Superman and the Flash have raced each other. Instead, I'm going to focus on the original trilogy, because as everybody knows, the original trilogy is the best. The first time Superman and the Flash raced each other to see who was really the fastest was in the pages of Superman number 199, cover date August 1967. The story is written by Jim Shooter, with art by Kurt Swan and George Klein, and it's titled, what else? Superman's Race with the Flash. Before getting into the story proper, can I just point out my favorite detail on this cover? It's Batman over here yelling, "Show him up, Flash!" This is the Silver Age. Superman's like his best friend. What an asshole. As the story begins, the word is out that Superman and the Flash are going to have a race. The people of Metropolis and Central City sure seem excited, but how did this race come to be? Why are Superman and the Flash doing this? Why else? As a favor to the Secretary General of the United Nations, who asks the heroes to run the race to raise funds to provide aid to developing countries. Naturally, Supes and Flash are all for it. They aren't the only ones. We check in on a couple of gambling syndicates, one based in the United States that has wagered heavily on Superman, one in Europe that has gone all in on the Flash. Being gangsters and all, each group has come up with a diabolical plan to fix the race in their favor. Cut to the day of the big race. A crowd has gathered to cheer both superpowered competitors on, including the Justice League. There's Aquaman and Hawkman wishing the Flash luck. And there's, hey, Batman encouraging Superman to win, but on the cover he was yelling in support of the Flash. And I thought Harvey Dent was the two-faced one. Supes and Flash take their marks, and at the sound of the starting pistol, off they go. 3 laps around the world, each lap a different route. Each route planned out to throw obstacles in the paths of our heroes, making this race a mental contest as well as a physical one. Superman is forbidden from flying by the rules of the contest, but there's nothing to say he can't swim, so once they hit the Atlantic Ocean, he has a slight advantage over Flash, who has to run across the choppy surface of the water. Things even out when they reach the Sahara Desert, where Flash can vibrate through the sand dunes, while Superman has to smash his way through. Things go on like that for a while. Superman has to run up and over one of the pyramids while Flash can just phase straight through. Superman's invulnerability makes running over the Himalayas no problem, while the cold and altitude give Flash some trouble, etc. Plus, they both pause to do some hero shit along the way, using their super speed to chop down trees for a crew of lumberjacks in Burma and bust up icebergs crowding the shipping lanes in the North Atlantic. They also use their superpowers to help each other out during the race, secretly, so they won't feel indebted to each other, because remember, one of the most fun things about superheroes during the Silver Age is how they're all neurotics who overthink everything. So, when the Flash stumbles while running across the sea during a typhoon, Superman uses his super breath to steady him. And when Superman is slowed down by a chunk of kryptonite that a volcano randomly belches out while they're passing by, Flash vibrates his feet to open a fissure in the ground to swallow up the kryptonite. And of course, we have to make time for some quaint stereotyping of people in foreign countries. Superman and Flash accidentally knock over a cart full of figs belonging to a Middle Eastern merchant. They use their superpowers to pick everything up, moving faster than the eye can see, and as they leave, we get this panel of the terrified merchant exclaiming, "Aye, save me! The market is haunted!" because he's an ignorant peasant. Things get a little bit complicated when Flash takes a nasty spill while crossing a frozen lake in Canada. He's knocked unconscious. Superman can't just leave him there, but he doesn't want Flash to know he stopped to help him, so Supes does a quick change into Clark Kent and tends to Flash until he's ready to resume the race. The story skips over how Superman is able to drop his Kent disguise and get far enough ahead of Flash so Flash can then catch up to him. I guess he flew, but figured it wasn't really cheating because he'd stopped to help, and now they were just going to be even again anyway. I don't know. The ethics of Silver Age superheroes are incredibly convoluted, another of their many charms. As Superman and the Flash head down the home stretch of their final lap, the two groups of gangsters put their respective plans into motion. The American gang, who is betting on Superman, position a pane of bulletproof glass in the Flash's path. Meanwhile, the Europeans, who are betting on the Flash, lay down a cloud of kryptonite dust for Superman to run through. Both tactics work perfectly, but they are only the first steps. Flash crashes through the window and gets knocked out, the second time he's been knocked out during this race. Who says track and field isn't a contact sport? Superman is weakened by the kryptonite. Both heroes are captured by their respective gangs, tied up and replaced by doubles who have been given orders to lose the race. As a result, we get the hilarious scene of a fake Flash running against a fake Superman, both of whom are trying to lose. Before long, both fakes stop completely and start arguing with each other over which one of them is going to lose. Meanwhile, Superman has come to and has just enough strength left, despite the kryptonite exposure, to use his telescopic vision to locate the Flash at the other gang's hideout and burn through the ropes, binding the Flash with his heat vision. Then, Flash returns the favor, saving Superman from the kryptonite, and they both continue the race, whooshing past their still arguing imposters on the road. They approach the end of the final lap in whatever city this is and cross the finish line at the exact same time, a tie, which Superman informs us in a thought balloon was the plan. They crossed the finish line together on purpose. Aha! So the fix was in, huh? Bullshit like this is why superhero racing has such a bad reputation. You know that? Actually, it's the neatest possible resolution given the direction the story went. As Superman explains in that thought balloon, the race being a tie means that none of the gangsters they encountered earlier will be able to profit from their wagers. Intentionally ending the race in a tie was the most heroic thing they could have done. Which is all well and good, but as Green Lantern points out in the closing panel, that still leaves one very important question left to answer. Who is actually the fastest? I smell rematch. And read it. Also, the caption at the bottom of the last panel says, "Watch for the rematch." Not bad, DC. I detect a little classic pro wrestling psychology in that storytelling. You don't just want to sell them one match, you want to sell them the next one too. end the first one in a tie so the people have to come back again to find out who's really the best. I can dig it. The people wouldn't have to wait very long either. The hotly anticipated rematch between Superman and the Flash is found in The Flash number 175, originally published just a few months later. Cover date December 1967. This one is written by E. Nelson Bridwell with art by Ross Andrew and Mike Esposito. It's called The Race to the End of the Universe. We open in Central City, naturally, where the Flash is just about to wrap up a bit of business with the Weather Wizard, drawing the Wizard's deadly lightning bolts away from the city's power plant with a lightning rod, when Superman swoops in out of nowhere and blocks the lightning bolts himself. After the two heroes team up to capture the Weather Wizard and his gang, Flash gets all up in Superman's face like, "What are you doing in my city, Boy Scout? You trying to steal my collar?" Superman is confused. "I'm here because you called me on the Justice League signal radio," he says. Flash says he has no idea what Supes is talking about, so Supes is like, "Well, somebody called me," and flies away. Later, at home in his true identity as Barry Allen, he talks over the situation with his wife Iris and worries that maybe Superman's trying to start shit in order to prove once and for all that he's the faster one. Yeah, that sounds like Superman. Actually, that seriously kind of does sound like the Silver Age Superman, doesn't it? The next day, in Metropolis, Superman interrupts an attempted gangland assassination. He flies between the intended victim and the bullets that were just fired, but before the bullets get there, in races the Flash to pluck them out of the air. Once again, they team up to arrest the bad guys. Once again, they get in each other's faces. This time, Superman is pissed at the Flash for stepping on his toes, and the Flash insists it was Superman who called him. Oh, so the second race isn't just going to be another fun run for charity. It's going to be a grudge match. I love it. Did Julius Schwartz have a sign in his office that read, "Personal issues draw money"? Never mind, things aren't headed that direction after all. They both get a call on their Justice League radios to report in for an emergency meeting. They arrive to find the rest of the League assembled, only nobody knows who called them in. That mystery is solved by the sudden appearance of these two, Rock and Sorban, from the planet Ventura, where apparently gambling is a very big deal. It turns out Rock and Sorban also wagered on that first race between Superman and Flash, Rock on Supes, Sorban on Flash, but since it ended in a tie, neither of them won. So, now they've tapped into the Justice League's secure radio frequency and trailed the League to their secret headquarters in order to challenge Superman and Flash to another race, so they can wager on that. I think these guys might have a gambling problem. The race they propose is a bit more epic than the first one. Instead of racing around the planet Earth a few times, Rock and Sorban want Superman and Flash to race to the edge of the galaxy and back, a total distance of about 40,000 light years, which sounds like a lot, but remember that Superman and the Flash can both move at the speed of light, which means the entire race should only take them about... I can't do the math in my head, but it shouldn't take very long. Flash is like, "Why should we agree to do this?" And the alien gambling addicts say, "So glad you asked, because the stakes are high for you two, as well as for us. If you lose the race, Flash, we'll destroy Central City. If Superman loses, we'll destroy Metropolis. If you refuse to race, we'll destroy both cities." That doesn't quite convince the Flash, so the aliens are like, "Okay, watch this." And they pull up an image of the asteroid Eros, which they intend to destroy to prove their power. Wait a second, that's not Eros. That's the satellite of love. Eject! Tom Servo, eject! Oh my god, no! Flash says, "Okay, you have persuaded me to run the race. Oh, wait, slight hiccup, I can't run in outer space." As if Rock and Sorban didn't think of that. This is Rock and Sorban we're talking about here. Rock, or Sorban, maybe, I don't know, whichever one has the wing collar instead of the rolled collar. I think that's Rock. He uses space magic to transform Flash's natural aura, so now when he's in outer space, he will automatically convert nearby cosmic dust particles into breathable oxygen and create a runway. That's some pretty impressive technology. And these guys are using it so they can bet on a foot race? Anyway, Rock and Sorban take a second to immobilize the rest of the Justice League, no big deal, and then, with one final warning to the Flash that he'll only be able to make space oxygen for a week, so he better hurry up and finish the race, Flash and Supes take their starting positions, and the race is on. Just like the first time, Superman and the Flash encounter obstacles on their way. First, they pass through a solar system with a red sun, which Superman swerves to avoid since the red sun will sap his powers. Then, while on his detour, Superman passes through the system where Rock and Sorban are from and flies by their home planet of Ventura. He sees a volcano erupting and decides to stop and help out, but then he sees something else through his telescopic vision, something that makes him change direction immediately. Flash and I must turn back, he declares in a thought balloon as he takes off away from the planet. Meanwhile, Flash encounters what appears to be a damaged spacecraft, but when he goes inside to see if the alien astronauts aboard need help, the hatch slams shut behind him and he finds himself trapped, much to the delight of whichever one this is watching the monitor. I can't see the collar. I can't tell. Flash is able to vibrate fast enough to phase through the wall and free himself, and once he's back in space and running away, he sees that the spacecraft was actually a shape-shifting interstellar Venus flytrap that took the form of a spaceship in distress to lure Flash in. Sorban? Yeah. Rolled collar, that's Sorban. Sorban watches on the monitor back at Justice League headquarters like, he escaped from the Space Venus flytrap, curses! Green Lantern notices this and remembers that Sorban is supposedly betting on the Flash to win, so why is he so mad that the Flash escaped the trap? Superman catches up to Flash and uses sign language to tell him they have to turn back, but Flash ain't having it. He thinks Superman is just trying to trick him into quitting the race. Just then, they're bombarded by a kryptonite meteor shower, which forces Superman to take another detour. Meanwhile, back at Justice League headquarters, Rock and Sorban are shocked to see none other than Superman charging after them. How is that possible? Turns out it's Martian Manhunter, disguised as Superman. Rock and Sorban defeat him and trap him in a fire cage, which is what they did before. Then he escaped, so this time the fire cage is even more powerful. That'll fix him. Flash runs to the other side of the kryptonite meteor field, but steps into a quicksand meteor, which is a thing. Luckily, Superman shows up, having suspected that Flash might be in danger since the same thing happened the first time he was forced to detour, and knocks the quicksand meteor into the atmosphere of a nearby planet, which causes it to burn up. Superman dives after Flash, hoping to take advantage of the atmosphere to speak to him about what he saw back at Ventura, but he's weakened by fragments of kryptonite that were lodged within the quicksand meteor. Superman has just enough strength left to speak to Flash using his power of superventriloquism. Superventriloquism! And some of y'all are still mad over that shot in Superman 2 when he throws the big S off of his chest. Silver Age Superman hears ya. Silver Age Superman don't care. Using his power of superventriloquism, Superman warns Flash that this whole thing is a trap for him. Flash still thinks it's a trick and runs off on his own detour to avoid running through a yellow star up ahead. While running through the solar system, Flash is attacked by spaceships who shoot at him with rays that seem designed specifically to hurt him. Superman comes to the rescue, melting the ship's guns with his heat vision, but by this point Flash is exhausted. They reach the edge of the galaxy, where they're supposed to turn around and head back to Earth for the final leg of the race, but Flash can't go on. He lands on a planet and declares to Superman that he's too tired to finish the race. So Superman's like, "Ha-ha! I am the fastest! I knew it!" and flies away. After Superman leaves, Flash hears a voice calling to him and looks over to see something he can't believe. We don't get to see it yet, though. Instead, we follow Superman, who is following the return route of their race through a nebula. A powerful vortex forms and begins pulling Superman into another dimension. His only hope is to call to the Flash for help, which he does by using his heat vision to burn a message into the sky of the planet where Flash is resting. Flash sees it, summons all of his remaining strength and stamina, and sprints back out into space. With Flash's help, Superman escapes the nebula vortex, and the two of them charge on toward Earth to finish the race. Their Justice League teammates watch as they cross the finish line. From Batman's vantage point, it looks like Superman wins. But according to Aquaman, Green Lantern, and Wonder Woman's view, Flash is the winner. What's up with that? Never mind. Here's Superman to face down Rock, and he's... Wait. Rolled collar. Rock's the one with the winged collar. If that's Rock, then he's... God damn it, the collars are the only way to tell them apart, Ross. You're lucky I'm only pretending to care about this for the sake of a bit. And also that you died 30 years ago, because otherwise, Superman's like, you're not Rock, right? I know, you can tell because of the collar. Oh, wait, no, that's not what he means. And Flash confronts Sorban with a similar accusation. But if these dudes aren't Rock and Sorban, who are they? Superman and Flash subdue them and reveal the truth to the rest of the Justice League. Sorban is actually Flash's old nemesis, Professor Zoom, aka Reverse Flash. Rock is actually Abracadabra, evil magician from the 64th century. And the destruction of Eros was only an illusion created by Abracadabra. Tom Servo lives! Superman reveals that when he looked down at Ventura with his telescopic vision, he saw the real Rock and Sorban wagering on which volcano would erupt first. Realizing the Rock and Sorban who had captured the Justice League must be imposters, he tried to convince the Flash to give up the race and head straight back to Earth. And while the Flash was resting on the planet at the edge of the galaxy, the voice he heard calling his name belonged to a fish, who was delivering a message from Aquaman by way of Green Lantern, who used the last spark of charge in his power ring to amplify Aquaman's ability to telepathically communicate with fish so that it could reach across the galaxy. It's all so simple when you think about it. The bad guys have been captured. Central City and Metropolis are safe. There's only one question left. Who won the race? Batman says it was Superman. Green Lantern says it was Flash. It seems like it was too close to call. So much so that Flash and Superman break the fourth wall and say to the readers, take another look at the panels of us crossing the finish line and make up your own minds. Leaving the ending deliberately ambiguous and telling nerds to argue about it amongst themselves, I'm telling you, in the Silver Age, comic book creators did not give a shit, and it was glorious. But another tie? 2 draws in a row? What is this? Samoa Joe versus CM Punk? Who's the fastest man alive? We need to settle this. There must be a rubber match. And of course there was. It came 3 years later in the form of an epic 2-parter in the pages of World's Finest Comics, numbers 198 and 199. Both parts were written by Denny O'Neil, with art by Dick Dillon and Joe Giella, and part 1 is titled Race to Save the Universe. Things kick off, as you probably expected, with Jimmy Olsen falling through a time warp and finding himself in ancient Rome, while a Roman soldier and his horse and chariot are pulled through in the opposite direction to modern-day Metropolis. Superman doesn't know about Jimmy yet, but he encounters the Roman and stops him from hacking a car with his sword. Next thing he knows, Superman is summoned by the Guardians, the bosses of the Green Lantern Corps, to their homeworld of Oa. Superman flies to Oa, bringing the Roman guy along for the ride. Once there, the Guardians fill Superman in on a pretty serious situation they've got going on. There are these beings from another dimension called Anachronids, and they've entered our universe for reasons unknown and are out there just kind of running around, which is a problem because they move at many times the speed of light. That many beings moving that fast through our space will eventually cause the fabric of time to break down, causing past and present to collide. The phenomenon has already begun to occur in a limited way, which accounts for the guy from ancient Rome showing up in Metropolis. Only one thing can prevent the Anachronids from destroying the fabric of time. The 2 fastest beings in our universe, Superman and the Flash, must race around the intergalactic neighborhood in the opposite direction of the Anachronids. That will maintain the balance. The Guardians teach Superman the route that must be followed and give him a special medallion that draws its energy from the same source as the power rings of the Green Lantern Corps. The medallion will protect the Flash, enable him to run in space, and telepathically show him the route. Superman returns to Earth, tells Flash the situation. Flash immediately agrees to help and accepts the medallion and says, "Oh, hey, I know we're doing this to save the universe and all, but since our last 2 races ended in ties, do you want to make this a race too, to finally settle who's the fastest?" Superman's like, "Okay." Batman gets to fire the starting pistol this time, and with a shot, the 3rd race to determine who is faster, for real this time, no fooling around, is underway. They run and they run and they run, and pretty soon they find themselves faced with a pack of Anachronids approaching from the other direction. The Anachronids aren't too happy to see Supes and Flash and start shooting at them. The energy bolts they fire don't hurt Superman, but they send Flash tumbling off course into a nearby star. Superman rescues Flash, but the Anachronids attack the star, causing it to go supernova, which creates a hole in space that leads to another dimension. Superman and Flash land on a planet in this other dimension and discover that its odd donut-shaped sun changes colors from yellow to red, which is a problem for Superman, who loses his powers under a red sun. Superman is captured by some of the locals, who leave him to the mercy of a big green monster. Flash shows up and saves Superman, and they manage to make it back into their own universe. Superman guesses correctly that the donut sun is a passageway between dimensions. They run into some more Anachronids and manage to slow one down long enough to see that the Anachronids are apparently robots. But the Anachronid they catch self-destructs, because it isn't designed to operate at sublight speeds. This raises all kinds of questions. If the Anachronids are robots, who built them? Why? What are they doing here? No time to answer those questions now. The race must continue to protect the flow of time. Meanwhile, 2,000 years ago, Jimmy Olsen has run afoul of the ancient Roman authorities and is about to be executed by an old-fashioned firing squad. He's 2 millennia removed from his pal Superman. Who will save him? We'll find out in part 2 of the story, which is titled Race to Save Time, and which I'll just go ahead and tell you about. Jimmy Olsen is just about to take 5 arrows in the chest, but fortunately, right at that exact moment, he slips into another time warp. He's not that lucky, though, because when he arrives at the other side, Jimmy finds himself at the mercy of the Spanish Inquisition, where he is once again sentenced to death. Looks like Jimmy's ass fell into the wrong time tunnel. Meanwhile, Superman and Flash are still running through space to counteract the time-destabilizing effects of the Anachronids. They're approaching the Andromeda Galaxy. They run into another pack of Anachronids, and this time, Superman is actually hurt when he collides with them on account of being weakened by the rays of a nearby orange star. Superman is knocked out and dragged away by the Anachronids. Flash does his best to fight them off, but one of them snatches him by his green medallion and drags him away too. Later, Supes and Flash awaken to find themselves tied up and at the mercy of a murderer's row of Kryptonian criminals who were banished to the Phantom Zone before Krypton's destruction. Kruel, Jax-Ur, General Zod, and Professor Vaycox. They've returned to the other dimension Superman and Flash fell into following the supernova in the previous issue, a dimension, Kruel explains, that lies at the far edge of the Phantom Zone. The criminals were able to break through into this dimension, but can't go any further. Professor Vaycox created the Anachronids and sent them through the Donut Sun portal into our universe, hoping that they would disrupt the time stream enough to allow the criminals to escape the Phantom Zone permanently. Flash is like, you'd sacrifice billions of lives just to set yourself free? And Kruel is like, yeah, dude, my name is Kruel. You really think I care about innocent lives? Superman is still weak from that orange sun, and Flash's medallion has been confiscated, so they're both too weak to break loose from their bonds. But once the Kryptonian criminals walk away to cede to their evil plans, Superman notices Flash's medallion hanging on a nearby rock, and he's got an idea. Since the medallion works the same way as a Green Lantern ring, it responds to willpower. So Superman and Flash both think at the medallion really hard, and are able to draw it over to them. Superman uses the medallion like a power ring to manifest a saw blade and cut himself free, but before he can cut Flash loose too, General Zod comes back, and they have a fight. Superman wins the fight, but just barely because of his weakened condition, and before it's over, Zod fires off a shot with his blaster that grazes Flash, temporarily paralyzing him from the waist down. Plus, Superman twists his ankle in the fight with Zod. Unable to do anything else, they crawl after General Zod, who staggered away from the fight with Superman to rejoin the other Kryptonian criminals at the control site for the Anachronids. As they go, to motivate them, Flash declares that the race isn't over and that he is still determined to beat Superman. They distract and manage to overpower Jax-Ur and Professor Vaycox outside the control center, then crawl on, racing against each other and against time. A countdown clock ticks away the seconds until the Anachronids completely disrupt the time stream. Dragging themselves along on their bellies, Superman and Flash climb up the stairs, reach the control room, and it's the Flash who stretches out his hand and pulls the master switch, deactivating the Anachronids, saving the universe, and winning the race. We're shown scenes of the timeline correcting itself. The Roman soldier who switched places with Jimmy is returned to his own time. Jimmy is returned to modern-day Metropolis seconds before being beheaded by the Spanish Inquisition. In the control room, Flash and Superman shake hands. Flash declares himself the fastest man alive, and Superman concedes. This time, anyway. Then Kruel, the last Kryptonian crook standing, appears in the doorway with a gun. But it's just his luck that the Donut Sun has decided to switch over from red to yellow, allowing Superman's twisted ankle to heal and restoring his super strength. Superman punches out Kruel and vows to imprison him and the others someplace where they won't be able to escape again, smashes the Anachronid-making equipment, then scoops up the Flash and flies into the Donut Star, which will take them back to their home universe. And that, rather abruptly, is the end of that. So, the final result of the original trilogy of Superman vs. Flash races stands at 2 draws and 1 victory for the Flash. Tough break, Soups, but nothing to be ashamed of. Since those first 3 times, Superman has run several more races against various versions of the Flash, and usually lost. There doesn't seem to be a definitive tally. Comic Book Resources, in an article published 2 years ago, lists 10 races between the two, including the 3 I've summarized here, for a total of 3 ties, 2 wins for Superman, and 5 wins for the Flash. A few of those are informal or impromptu races, not officially agreed upon competitions. The Flash-centered website Those Who Ride the Lightning has a stricter listing of only 7 races, with 2 ties, 1 with no result listed, and 4 wins for the Flash. Anyway you slice it, the Flash seems to come out ahead in the long run. I know, I heard it too, let's just keep going, we're almost done. That's only fair. Running fast is kind of Flash's whole deal. If Superman was faster than the guy whose one thing is that he's really fast, that wouldn't be fair. So the Flash is the fastest, and good for him. Which one of them is the fastest isn't really the point anyway. They're fictional characters. Neither one of them is actually faster than the other because neither one of them is actually anything. Who's faster? Whoever the writer of the story you're reading says is faster. What's important is the story, and what that story tells us about these characters and their world, and our world. As silly and preposterous and wonderfully ridiculous as the stories I've told you about in this video are, they all feature Superman and the Flash putting their contest, their personal pride to the side in order to help each other and to be there for people who need them. Yes, they tell us that Superman and the Flash are almost evenly matched in terms of speed, but that the Flash might be just a little bit faster. But they also tell us that there are more important things than proving yourself to be the best. Things like friendship, standing up to evil, standing up for others, and when necessary, being gracious in defeat when you've lost to an honorable opponent, like Superman at the end of their 3rd race when he concedes Flash's victory and shakes his hand, a gesture that earns him a claim to being the classiest, as well as quite possibly the best Superman ever.